Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Welcome to Ballet Teaching. This is me, Faisal Noman, student of Zoology, Corman Postgraduate College, Sawabi. Today, my presentation is about the feedback mechanisms. Feedback mechanisms. What is a feedback mechanism? The first of all, we are going to talk about the feedback mechanisms. The feedback mechanism is the detection of change by the receptor and sending signal by the control systems to the effectors for a response is called feedback mechanisms. So this is the feedback mechanisms, and as depends to you peoples that feedback mechanisms is such a type of response which is accounts by the receptors, and then as the processes and the central unit and observes as response comes from the central systems by the effectors. So these things are known as the feedback mechanisms. So there's two types of feedback mechanisms. Dear students, the first type it is the feedback mechanisms, but the feedback mechanisms it is the feedback mechanism. The first type it is the negative feedback mechanisms. The negative feedback mechanisms it is the type of feedback mechanism in which the effector response is the opposite to change the external environment, and the another it is the positive feedback mechanisms. So the positive feedback mechanisms, the type of feedback mechanisms in which the effector response is the similar or towards the change in the external environment. So these are the two types of the feedback mechanisms. So the first I'm going to talk about the example of the feedback mechanisms in the negative. The negative feedback mechanism example it is the dehydrations. The dehydrations of the body. So the dehydrations of the bodies mean that the less water in the body. When the amount of water it's less in the body, so the stimulations of the secretions of the antidiuretic hormone LTH in the body, the LTH secretions by the pituitary gland, this ADH and then increase by the reabsorptions of the waters in the distal parts of the nephrons. If the blood is more dilute, the waters mean that the more water in the body mean that if the body have more waters, so it's mean that the blood are more diluted. So the secretions of ADH inhibited mean that it stops, and the distal part of the nephrons mean that the distal part of the nephrons then fails to reabsorb the waters, and more water are excretions hid in the urine. So this is the examples of the negative feedback mechanism. Now comes to the examples of the positive feedback mechanisms. So the example of the positive feedback mechanism it is the uterus contractions during childbirth. During childbirth, the pressures of the bodies mean that the pressure of the body head against the sensor and near to the opening of the uterus stimulates the urine and uterine contractions mean that the uterus contractions it is stimulated by the uterus as the head of the pelvis. So nearest the openings the uterus the stimulates uterine contractions in which causes the greater pressures against the uterine opening. This increase the concentration the contractions which cause still greater pressures and it brings the childbirth. So this is the example of the feedback mechanisms. So this is one of the examples. So this is a little video part today, and if you peoples like this video, so for more updates, like and subscribe and share this video that I get more and more beneficial buyers, and you people also get some beneficial products. And thanks for watching.